I'm Jillaine Heather. I'm the CEO of the Free Speech Union. What I've been finding is increasingly we're in this polarised world where there's no good engagement for debate, or everything seems to be a very heightened moral right or wrong, and we're not engaging on nuance with people. I think that free speech is a fundamental operating system for a flourishing community, a flourishing democracy. It's if we can't engage, we're going to sort of turn into this brittle, fragile community and society. And I think we're seeing that out there in discourse, in the media, in our community at the moment. So we decided that what we needed was a good faith yarns tour. 10 cities, 10 conversations with at least 10 different people, and sometimes there's 2 guests on the stage as well. What are the topics we're touching on?
Well, I'm Ani O'Brien. For those who don't know me, I kind of became a bit of a controversial figure accidentally. About 13 or so years ago, I accidentally said something on the internet, as people do. It was to do with transgenderism, and I questioned whether males should be in female prisons, whether they identified as men or women. And that got me in a bit of trouble. And so I kind of became associated specifically with the women's rights movement.
What led you to the Free Speech Union? Obviously, speech is a large part of what you were trying to do and advocate for.
Yeah, well, it was that topic. It was really, I kind of became very cancelled. And so I can't remember if I approached the FSU or the FSU approached me. It was right back at the beginning of FSU's history. They were still FSC then, the Free Speech Coalition. And I think it was probably something like these guys who'd set up the FSC were like, hey, there's a woman, one of us over there, causing a bother. And so they pulled me into things. I ended up working in politics for a bit. So I went and worked for Judith Collins when she was the leader of the opposition. And I was her head of digital. It was an incredible ride. I learned a lot about our political system and our parliament and our politicians. And then I kind of got it more into writing my own stuff. And yeah, people seemed interested in it. They've started listening. And I've just built a bit of a following. And so it's a mixture. It used to be more just, women interested in women's rights, but now I've got more of a broader political New Zealand audience. So yeah, that's me. I guess I say I'm a writer because that's what I love to do. I like exploring ideas and getting them out there for people to engage with. And then when I was approached by you
Yes.
and the rest of the team about doing a bit of a tour, I was really keen, but I didn't want to just have a scrap with people. I didn't want to just kind of set up debates or like kind of a conflict situation. Well, if we could make it happen, let's get people talking about some challenging topics. We may or may not agree, but let's try and have a respectful debate or not even a debate, respectful discussion where we can actually model some of the behaviours that we're encouraging New Zealanders to engage in.
Wellington. We're talking about assisted dying. That is a hot button personal topic. What do you think we're going to see in Wellington?
I hope we're going to actually see a really great discussion because we've got 2 really nice guys, Todd Stephenson, who's an MP from ACT, and former National MP Simon O'Connor, genuinely 2 nice people on completely opposite sides of this debate. So ACT is proposing to expand our existing end-of-life bill, and Simon is opposed to that. And I think it's such an interesting topic because it comes down not just to the practicalities, but the questions of philosophy and morality and belief, the role of government. So I think there will be some super interesting discussion had there from the guys. And also for me, it's a very interesting topic because I feel like I sit in the middle of them a bit and I'm not sure where I'm going to end up because I voted in the referendum to support the initial bill. However, in the years since, I've seen how expanded laws have happened overseas in Canada and Europe and so forth, I've also observed the debates over the UK failing to adopt the law, but having those debates. And I'm also partway through reading Kathleen Stock's book on it. I think it's Do Not Go Gently, I think it's called. And all of those things have really shifted how I think about it. So I'm my opinion's up for grabs on it, because I was a supporter, but I have questions now. And so I hope that a few people like me maybe come along to Parliament to listen and just see if we can get persuaded either way. But as we say, it's not a big debate. They're not going to, throw fisticuffs. I think I can't even imagine. I cannot imagine Simon and Tosh. No, not with those two.
Exactly.
But it's going to be a really intelligent discussion, I think.
Yeah. It's such a personal topic too for people. So really interesting where the legislature or government overtures really impact on very, very personal decisions in people's lives about end of life, essentially.
It is one of those things it's similar to abortion, I think, where people can think rationally and factually about things, and that's great on both sides. But I think it also is a really deep question of where some of those I guess ideas that we really identify with in terms of morality and philosophy and that kind of thing, and values, and that puts people on really opposite sides. And so some of these topics, it can be very difficult to discuss. I think we've got two great speakers to come and discuss this one. But often with these things, abortion, end of life, that kind of thing, where it's really tied to morality and values, it can get very difficult to have both sides in the room, because one might be fire and brimstone and the other one's calling them evil, and it becomes really ugly. And so I think this is a great chance to delve into a topic that is so personal, as you say. But I have great faith in the two speakers we've got, that they'll be really great kind of examples of how to just have a great discussion about it.
We were talking earlier today about Tauranga. You seem to be getting a little bit of online pushback about our guest there or the topic. Do you want to chat about that?
I found that quite funny, because I saw that one of our wonderful speakers, Professor Paul Moon, had posted about the event on his social media. And so I happily went along to share it. And I saw he was getting a bit of grief because he is Pākehā, and this other speaker, Dr. Alistair Reese, who's also at Tauranga, is Pākehā as well. And we're going to be talking about 186 years of the treaty, so the history aspect of it. Now, they're both historians. They're both experts of treaty history. So I think they're more than qualified to have a discussion. And also, I reject the idea that that one has to be a certain race to talk about certain things. Sure, there's aspects where you might have a certain experience that makes you have a certain perspective that you might want to have, and I understand that. But there was this real idea that these two men could not speak on the topic because they were both Pākehā, and I think they're two of the most qualified people in the country to talk about it. And also what I didn't like was that this somehow generated this idea that I was only speaking to white people, which is just not the case. It is very much not the case. And as I said, in Christchurch, we're having another treaty conversation, and that's with Professor Te Maire Tau, who is definitely not white. And we've also got a few other Māori speakers. We've got Sir Ian Taylor, and we've got Mike Casey in Queenstown. They won't be speaking on Māori issues, but they are Māori men. And so, I found it quite strange that there was this idea that because this one stop in Tauranga, we have a treaty issue, and because these two men were both Pākehā, they weren't allowed to speak on it. And I dare you to try find anyone more qualified than Professor Paul Moon on the history aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like not only at times we've been told what to think, we're also being told who can actually have an opinion on something. And it's either an appeal to authority or an expert, which it isn't in this case because I would say these two are experts, or it's a closing down on who can speak out of either lived experience or identity or some other criteria.
Which I just reject. I mean, as I say, there's a difference between someone has experienced this thing, so they might have some more interesting context to share. Totally accept that. But the idea that, I speak a lot these days about what I perceive as the mistakes we've made around deeming everything masculine toxic. So I speak a lot about some of the challenges facing men at the moment, which seems to really confuse people on the basis of, I come from feminism and that's what my entire shtick has been, but also that a woman why would you bother talking about that? Well, because I'm a human. I find it interesting. I also see it as a large societal problem for us. And I think that also, which these same people who criticize me would agree with this if it was a different circumstance. I see myself as lending my voice to men who would get shut down if they tried to talk about it. Now, people would do the same if it was a minority group or whatever. And so that's my example, I guess, of saying that I don't think that we should pigeonhole ourselves to just talk about the things that, okay, I can talk about white people stuff, women's stuff, gay stuff. Okay, that's my box now. You can only talk about blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah, people should be able to make up their own minds on the evidence and reasons and the arguments you present rather than, as you say, being pigeonholed and narrowing the conversation down before we even have the conversation, which is part of what this tour is about in terms of engagement. I'm also looking forward to Auckland, and we might have a special guest being announced a little bit later. Watch this space. But talk to me about the Auckland topic and the Auckland guest.
I am thrilled that Rob Campbell has agreed to talk with us. I know he's had a bit of grief for agreeing to sit down with me. But I hope that he will see that I don't breathe fire and I don't ride a broomstick. We'll see. That remains to be seen. He might say that's not the case. Anyway, but I'm very excited to have the discussion with Rob Campbell because I admire his career. He has been a unionist and a very senior public servant. He's now the Chancellor of AUT. So very accomplished man. He is on the left, and believe it or not, people who don't know, I did come from the left. I find myself somewhat in the middle somewhere now. And what we're going to talk about that I find really interesting is that Rob was as senior as you can get as a public servant. He was the chair of Health New Zealand under the previous government. And he strayed out of his lane to talk about other issues politically. And it brings up the question of political neutrality versus freedom of speech for him as an individual. And I think that's just a really, people might disagree where that line sits, but I think it's such an interesting thing to discuss. He ended up losing his job because the government decided that he had spent too much time talking about things they didn't want him to be talking about. I guess they perceived that he had not been politically neutral enough. And there will be people who agree and disagree with that. What I find interesting is that he is a strong voice, he's opinionated, and there is an argument to be had about what we lose and gain by suppressing someone like that. So yes, we want him to be politically neutral as chair of Health New Zealand. So within that scope, is there room for him then to have political opinions that he expresses openly on other issues? We were told no, but that's the conversation we're going to have. I'm looking forward to all of them. I am, but I have to admit I'm probably looking forward to Christchurch slightly more because I admire Professor Te Maire Tau, but also because the topic that we have it's a challenging one, but it's about how I've kind of pitched it as, we've had the Treaty Principles Bill and there was a whole all almighty scrap went on and there was marches and there were upset in Parliament and everyone lost their head and it finished. And there's been a kind of lull afterwards. There's been ongoing stuff, but kind of a lull. And I want to talk to the professor about what he sees as the future now post Treaty Principles Bill, what our relationship looks like with this document that we simply seem to not be able to agree what it means and what its role should be,
or even
discuss. And he's a historian with a great knowledge of its past, but I'm kind of want to talk about like where do we go now, and so I'm looking forward to that chat because I think, I mean, I don't want to preempt his opinions, so I won't preempt them, but I know that some of my opinions challenge some of the orthodoxies of academia, government, that public service, all of those ones, the good things. And so I know that there is a challenging conversation to be had there. And so I'm looking forward to that one a lot. I've never met him, so hopefully we have a good chat.
There you go. 10 conversations, 10 exciting topics, and 10 local people to speak to as well.
Yeah, I really encourage this. I mean, obviously, not obviously, some people don't know me, but I'm very polarizing, shall we say. I don't intend to be, but I've ended up there. And probably my father would say that was always where I was going to end up, but and so there are a sizable group on the internet who don't always like what I say, and some of them are engaging at the moment with trying to encourage some of the speakers not to sit down with us. And I would just really encourage some of those people to come along instead. They can stand up and respectfully ask me a question about some of the views that they really disagree with. They can respectfully come and have a chat with me afterwards. And I'm happy for them to disagree with me. I'm happy for them to put to me some of the things that they really, really do not like. And perhaps we'll have a conversation. Perhaps we'll continue to disagree. I'd say so, probably. But they may also see that I'm a human. They're a human. And we are capable of being in the same room and discussing things. So, yeah, I would say instead of reaching for the instinctive cancel button, maybe come along. It's only $10. Actually, I'll pay the $10 if you are so grumpy at me.
There's a challenge.
If you're so grumpy at me that you want to cancel and you don't want to pay the $10, I will pay the $10. You come along and be respectful.
Annie, I'm excited to kick this off next week with you. I think this is going to be a excellent time. As I said, we'll have 10 cities, 10 regional places, if not cities, that we're touring through. All the tickets are on fsu.nz. You can buy your tickets. They're only $10. And we are selling out some venues. So if people are interested, please, reach out and get your tickets and come with your questions.